Wakili Ndegwa Njiru is a constitutional lawyer. He's here with us in the studio. Good morning.
Good morning.
Welcome to Kenya's biggest conversation.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be with you. And Happy New Year to everyone.
Yes,
this is one of the hottest show that we can never miss any morning when you're driving to work or when you're just seated in our comforts. It's a very insightful show. And it's a show that really gives the real situation in the situation room. Yeah.
You're very kind.
Thank
Now, what I'm saying is, he said all this and we haven't paid him.
Can you imagine?
And now, when we pay him, what will he say?
Of course, I'll be putting my fee note across at the fullness of time.
Fee note.
Wakili, you are several things. You're a constitutional lawyer, but also you commented a lot on political issues and matters that are affecting the country.
Yes.
You've participated in political processes.
Yes.
Including political campaigns, including defending governors and county assembly at the Senate.
That's correct.
Because of impeachment proceedings.
Yes.
Sasa, let's talk about, a matter that you've been very passionate about lately.
Yeah.
And this is the politics of the country.
Yes.
Specific to the Mount Kenya region.
Exactly.
Now, first of all, tell City your name. Ndegwa Njiru.
Ndegwa Njiru. It's just a simple name that means a black bull.
Come on.
Okay, so which part of the Ndegwa Njiru is black and which one is bull?
Yeah, it's a bull that is black.
So the bull is Ndegwa?
Yes, the bull is Ndegwa. Njiru is black. You might choose to have it with horns or you may dehorn it.
So if you look at me, you can say I'm a Njiru person.
His name means, is it crocodile or hippo?
City.
Or Muga.
No, he's right.
Which one, crocodile or hippo? There's a difference.
Why don't you go to rhino so that we...
It's rhino.
You see, I have an uncle of mine.
Yes.
He shares your name. If the name hippo means, Muga means hippo.
No. Hippo is Rao.
For him is Nguo. Nguo means hippo. And the father is Njiru. So he says Nguo Njiru, a black hippo. And me, I'm Ndegwa Njiru, a black bull.
In the same family?
Yeah, it's the same family.
Telling you, it's animal farm.
You're from Kirinyaga County.
Yes, I'm from Kirinyaga County.
Now, that is one thing also that you know about Kirinyaga County.
This is animal
kingdom. Yes. Kirinyaga County is very, very passionate about animals. Very many people's names. Yes.
I think because of the influence of the Mount Kenya forest, Mount Kenya National Park, and also the Moya National Park. I think that could have been the influence. That most of our parents spent quite some good time in the forest. The others who are also claiming to have been Mau Maus, and we know their origin. And of course, other than just making that claim, there is no any other attachment. Because I've tried even to look behind and researched slightly whether it is true the people who are now claiming to be real Mau Maus were actually Mau Maus. Because the real Mau Maus were actually seen in between 1990 to 1997, all the way to the clamor of the multi-party politics in Kenya, all the way to the promulgation of the new constitution. The real Mau Maus and the real children of the Mau Maus were seen. Where were these ones? I don't want to mention names. I don't think it is worth.
The children of Mau Mau span the entire country.
Yes, they span.
There are some that, were in the 90s. There are some now that are in the 2023s.
But there's no one who can claim to be more Mau Mau than the others. There's no one who should claim to be more Mau Mau than the others.
Eric,
we were all displaced. My family was displaced by the whites during the colonial period. So one cannot say that I am now the actual Mau Mau.
The black bull has a point. It's a very, very valid point.
Of course, he does have a point. It's only that he's isolating his point. He's playing a lawyer.
Actually, it's called emphasizing his point.
No, he's isolating the point and making it appear like the person who's claimed to be the son of Momoa said, I am the only
the person whose name he will not mention.
Yes. I'm the only surviving son of Momoa. No,
you see, the reason why that individual is purporting to be more Momoa than the other is because he's trying to claim for legitimacy and relevancy in Mount Kenya region.
Has he really purported to be more Momoa than the others?
Yes, he has. Has, because he has projected himself as the only Mau Mau.
Black Bull, is that not more of an interpretation than a fact, really?
It's a fact.
It's an interpretation.
Because that idea of I being a Mau Mau has just originated. It has just attached It has just germinated.
Do I hear you to be saying that if today I am sitting here and I decide I am also Mau Mau, is that the sort of thing that he has done?
Why did you become a Mau Mau today because you are just seated there and you are not before? You know, that's the question.
I see.
Why now?
Why not before?
Why do you now have to claim that title with a lot of zeal
But why
and
not?
passion? You
But why
see,
not?
the
If
real
it's
Mau
part of
Maus
your
are
life,
known by, the real Mau Maus are known by their conduct. Their conduct. That they believe in the fundamental principles of change. They believe in some fundamental principles of democracy. They believe in fundamental principles of the rule of law. Those are the actual, as rudimentary as they were. You know, the Kemadis and all those individuals, the Ocheng Onekos and all those guys. If you could try to look at them and juxtapose now the current self-claimed Mau Mau, and then you look on an apparent way, very obvious way, and you look at them and weigh them and assess them, you'll see where the weight will fall. The scale can never fall on that side of the person who is now claiming to be more than the others. It cannot. It
Never.
will be a mistake. In fact, it's an insult to those people who believed in that particular cause. Because these individuals is not known to have a champion any change. This person is known to have been one of those guys who have been in the forefront of oppressing the real children of Mau Maus. So he cannot actually claim it. It's an insult to them that believes and belongs to that particular category of individuals. And I can say this without any fear of contradiction.
Are you a child of Mau Mau?
Yes. Yes, my father, my mother, they were all in the concentration camps. You see, these individuals who come from, and allow me mention, because
Please.
we have some few prejudices in Mount Kenya region, if you don't know.
Please proceed.
For example, those people who came from Madeira, we keep on saying that Madeira magithomo, hii ni Madeira ya masomo.
Meaning?
Because of the influence of Tomotomo and the PCA's aspects, right? They came and settled there. So Madeira people were so much co-opted into the Western education, to an extent that when people were actually going to the forest, for them they were pursuing books. That is why you can see people like Gakara Wanjao, who are very renowned writers, originated from Madeira. And people in Madeira, because of that aspect of they appreciated and embraced the Western education. That's why we call them Madeira Magidhomo. So any person who comes from Madeira, and then you claim to be, and of course those guys who went to school, they were not Mau Maus, they were collaborators. That we must understand. They appreciated the Western way of life, Madeira Magidhomo. So when you now come and say, and you come from Madeira, that you are more Mau Mau than the others, and we know what those other guys did.
There are several things that you're doing, and
Yes.
I think let's not do that.
Yes.
One is saying that there are people who are claiming to be more Mau Mau than the others.
Exactly.
They have not said they're more Mau Mau than the others.
Yes.
Okay, now let's talk about Deputy President, for example, Rigathi
Yes.
Gachagua,
Yeah, of course you have
who
mentioned,
has
I didn't
come out
mention.
openly to say,
Yes.
I am a son of Mau Mau.
Yes.
He basically just says that. It so happens that, we are giving examples. The Deputy President is from Madeira, is from Nyeri. He has said he's a son of Mau Mau. Has he said, I am the only son of Mau Mau? No. Has he said, I am more Mau Mau than others? No. Has he said, I am Mau Mau? No. He said, I'm a descendant of Mau Mau.
You guys, there is something you always call the story behind the story.
Yes.
So there is something behind that claim and proclamation, and that aspect
Do you
of
have
entitlement.
any information, Ndegwa,
Not that I have any
that
information.
can contradict
Yes.
what the Deputy President is saying? He is the son of Mau
Of course,
Mau.
of course, noting that the people in Madeira collaborated
Okay.
in
Do
the
you have
aspect.
any evidence that will show that Mr. Rigathi Gachagua
Yes.
is not the son of a Mau Mau
You
or
see,
descendant of
you see,
Mau Mau?
you see, they say if you see something that
Don't
looks
generalize
like a
because
duck,
people of Madeira.
walks like a
Not
duck.
everybody in Madeira collaborated with the Wazungu.
That's true.
Uh-huh.
That's true. It is quite true. But you see, they say if you see something that looks like a duck, quacks like a duck, waits like a duck, it must be a duck.
No, it could be a goose.
It must be a duck. That's what they say. You know, and when I look at this duck, all the way from when you were fighting for multipartyism, and the kind of the way the duck was quacking then, and then I see how the duck is now quacking, it could be a goose, not a duck.
You know, There is something called conjecture.
Yes, conjecture, yes.
You, being a learned friend, you'd understand this better than most of us.
Yes, I do.
History has this tendency of morphing and changing with time, and with it comes the interpretation of it.
Yes.
And a lot of it also has to do with how it has been rewritten. Not written, rewritten.
Exactly.
Okay? Now, what I hear you to be saying is that the history of the Mau Mau has been rewritten. And it has been rewritten with a bias that doesn't serve the interests of people who actually fought that particular war.
Exactly.
Do I hear you correctly?
That is exactly the position.
And so if it's been rewritten, then it means that there are people you are claiming are placing themselves in a position where...
In high pedestals.
This guy's a bone to pick. But anyway, let's continue. You are saying...
Brings the issue right to the topic
Yes.
what we wanted to discuss today.
Yes.
The politics of Mount Kenya.
Yeah,
Richard.
the politics of Mount Kenya.
So Mount Kenya has, if we look at the last 3 decades,
Yes.
has had very influential leaders who people have galvanized around.
Yes.
Okay, so let's even go back. Let's start with the 90s, the multi-party.
Exactly.
So we had Matiba. Okay, we had Kibaki. We've had Uhuru. We've had other leaders also who basically have been working with those main ones.
Yes.
There's been this conversation now with the exit of Uhuru Kenyatta from government, from mainstream politics.
Yes.
Is Mount Kenya looking for a new kingpin? Are people positioning themselves to become the new kingpins of Mount Kenya? And we've seen all these leaders from the region. We've seen the Attorney General Justin Muturi. We've seen the Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua. We've seen people like the governor, for example, of Murang'a County, the former governor of Murang'a, presidential hopeful, Mwangi wa Iria, and others.
Yes.
What's the fate of Mount Kenya in politics?
I think if we were to do justice to this topic, it would be prudent for us to have an analysis of all those individuals that you have mentioned. Speak of someone like Kenneth Matiba the late, and God rest his soul. Speak of people like Charles Robia. Speak of all those individuals. Speak of people like the late President Mwai Kibaki. Speak of people like the retired President Uhuru Kenyatta. These are individuals who have grown from the grassroots. The individuals people have identified and said that these guys, they can be our leaders. If you look at the way Uhuru Kenyatta was grown, he was groomed, and he ended up being a president, and then you compare to how Mr. Rigathi is being has grown, you'll of course say that Mr. Rigathi belongs to the class of the grafting. He was grafted. He's a grafted leader. You know the way you graft a mango with with another mango.
Banana.
GMO. GMO in the making.
It's as a result of grafting.
mango.
And you know, you have to look at the species of what you are grafting. If you go and graft a mango and a banana, certainly I do not think that the genetic aspects will actually marry. You'll have what they're now propagating, what she's calling the GMO. So Mr. Gachagua is a GMO product. He's a GMO politician. And that's why you can see he's struggling to assert himself as a kingpin. Kingpins don't assert themselves.
They organically?
They organically grow. And people appreciate them, and people identify with them.
Who's grafting him?
He was grafted by Mr. William Ruto.
How?
For purposes of trying to show the Mount Kenya region that they are represented in government. Remember,
how was he grafted?
He was grafted for purpose. It was a fictitious grafting for political motive and political purposes and political processes. In the sense that, if you remember to the run-up to his appointment, there was a contestation between him and Professor Kindiki, a man that I have a lot of respect for. And God forbid that he never became. You see, at the instance, Mr. William Ruto had already identified the person who ought to be the deputy president of this country. But I have no ability to confirm this, that Mr. Gachagua asserted and forced himself into the process. Remember, Mr. Gachagua, the votes from Mount Kenya would still have gone to William Ruto, with or without Mr. Gachagua.
Okay. Wakili, you've contradicted yourself.
Yes.
You've said that William Ruto had identified Professor Kindiki as the person.
Yes.
But then Rigathi Gachagua
Forced himself into the system.
So then Rigathi was not grafted.
You see, the reason why the grafting is not at that particular time when he was forcing himself. The grafting I'm speaking about is now when he speak about him being the kingpin of Mount Kenya region. Meaning that my idea is that he has not come from the grassroots. He's not a grassroots leader who has been grown from the grassroots as Kibaki, as Matiba was, Charles Rubia was, as Uhuru Kenyatta was. So he's trying to coronate himself. He's trying to enthrone himself to that particular aspect.
Is there any leader currently in Mount Kenya who is a grassroots leader who would say would fit that bill?
If you remember what happened to Uhuru Kenyatta before, in his preparation to become the president, there are some wazees who met. They call them wazee wa Kiama. And they gave him something called modegi. This modegi is a staff. It is a symbol of leadership in Mount Kenya region. And you don't ask for it. No leader is supposed to ask for that modegi. It's given to you after serious evaluation by wazees. But what you can see what Mr. Gachagua is doing is actually saying, give me the modegi. That modegi, when it is already being held by another Mudhuri is a mzee in Mount Kenya region, you cannot have another Mudhuri asking for it until it is passed over to you. So the person who is going to pass this mantle of leadership to Mr. Gachagua is Uhuru Kenyatta, the person whom he does not want to see eye to eye. So unless that is done, even if they go somewhere the way they did the other time round and they give him the Mudhegi, there cannot be two Mudhegis in Mount Kenya region. It's only one. And the Mudhegi would give an example of the one that Moses was given when he was going to lead the children of Israel from Egypt.
Okay.
Is akin to that type of stuff. It can't be held by two individuals at the same time.
Okay, so there's a lot of jostling for this position, and
Yes.
let me just take a few steps back and then ask a question which might seem as though it's a simple question. However, I think Justin Muturi at some point was even coronated.
Yes.
He went somewhere, people did things, said things, and then the question was, who then gave him the right to do so? And this was asked by other would-be leaders.
Yes.
And then there was always the unsaid that it was Uhuru Kenyatta. There is now the deputy president who, also seems to be jostling for that space.
Yes, claiming.
Right. The people over whom this leadership is going to be pronounced, what do they feel? One. And two, why is it so important to have somebody to shepherd the people of Mount Kenya? Do they feel that they still need to be shepherded in this manner?
And I would begin by answering your last question. Do we need to be shepherded? Do we need to be protected? You see, this idea of people thinking that Mount Kenya region is so delicate, it must be protected, is a toxic idea. It's an idea that is being propagated by those individuals who want to benefit from it. And I would not shy off to say Mr. Gachagua. Mr. Gachagua is trying to instill fear in Mount Kenya region that if Mr. Gachagua is not there, Mount Kenya region will cease to exist. Mount Kenya region was able to survive the most hostile environment of the Mzungu era. And many other eras, Mount Kenya region was able to survive. So Mr. Gachagua, for his survival, he must instill fear in Mount Kenya region that unless I am there, you guys are doomed.
But let's take a few steps back, even before the deputy president, and we saw all of this hoo-ha about even before that, this delicacy that you speak of still existed. There was always the talk of Mount Kenya, the kingpin is this. Uhuru Kenyatta might be losing his grip on the mountain.
Yes.
And then we have Justin Muturi then, who was coronated. So even before the talk of the deputy president, there was still this urge and push to have somebody there. And that's the question I'm asking. Why?
Of course, I've said this for purpose of political expediency. It has been projected, something that needs some empirical test, whether really the Mount Kenya region is currently leading in the economics of aspects of this country. And then they are told, if you don't have one of your own, those economic engagement that you engage with, that entrepreneurship that you have, that industrial aspect that you have, will be crumbled down by the system. So in fear of that, they coalesce around an individual. And that's why you can see Mr. Gachagua is using the Sakaja issue of the Matatu as an entry point to appear as if he's the only person who can protect the Kikuyu. I keep on saying, if we have a working democracy, if we have a working institutions, we don't need individuals to protect a community. Because the institutions and the rule of law that has been created or that is in existence will be able to protect those processes. So, in my view, the aspect of the need to have the leaders of Mount Kenya region coming up with the Kingpin is for political expediency purposely. And he's trying to position himself for 2027. Remember, Mr. Gachagua is not the deputy president because he was relevant in Mount Kenya region. He was not politically relevant.
Really?
Even currently, is not politically relevant.
Why do you say that?
Simply because the votes that William got were not brought by him.
How do you know?
If you look at what happened, William was struggling between Mr. Gachagua and Professor Kindiki. That means, if he chose Professor Kindiki, he would still have won the Mount Kenya votes.
How do you know?
Reason being, William had sought for these votes way before. He had adhered himself to the people through the process of propagating misinformation and fear for Uhuru Kenyatta.
Simple question then.
Yes.
So why did the president have to pick somebody from Mount Kenya? He could have then picked a deputy from anywhere.
Yeah, because of that idea of Mount Kenya, people wanting to feel that we are in government, we are protected. What happens to other communities that are not in government? Who will protect them?
So even if William Ruto had picked Ndegwa and Njiru as his running
he would
mate,
still have got
he'd
the
still
votes.
have gotten the votes that
He would still have gotten the votes. Remember, William Ruto got the Mount Kenya votes. Again, not because people loved him so much, but because he had instilled fear of the administration that was there then. He had instilled fear and hate for President Kenyatta. So it was a vote against President Kenyatta. It was not a vote for William Ruto. And you'll see it happening in 2027. Utatafuta hizo kura nasema alizipata zikose. Because at that particular time, the Kenyatta fact will not be there.
Were you projecting a William Ruto win, particularly in Mount Kenya, before the election? You as Ndegwa Njiru.
Yes, but dynamics did change slightly. William Ruto had gone to Mount Kenya region quite early. He had, of course, misinformed people the way he did. He endeared himself to the people, and the people fell in love with them. And I know he must be telling you about Romeo and Juliet. It was a Romeo and Juliet situation in Mount Kenya region. Yes.
Let's take a break. Let's take a minute-made break.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
Eric Latif, C.T. Muga, Ndu Oko, and Ndegwa Njiru, constitutional lawyer and political analyst. We are talking about Mount Kenya politics, the emergence of Kingpin, or is there? C.T.
Yes, please.
A question for Ndegwa.
Everything that the Black Bull has spoken of, in my mind, crystallizes what one could refer to as Kenyan politics. What is referring to as grafting, whether it's calling appointments. If you look at our history, everything that he has spoken of is not new. It's happened before. So then comes the question, are we then saying, if we were to agree with you, that there's something fundamentally wrong with our politics?
Certainly, yes. There's certainly something very, very wrong with our politics. And we thought we would correct those anomalies with the promulgation of the new constitution. Because the new constitution has given the foundation of how a state or a nation should be founded. It has given the foundation of building a new nation. But unfortunately, we dropped the ball to the extent that we are not able to implement and realize the fruits of the new constitution as contemplated. For example, Kenyans give unto themselves a very important article in the constitution, which is called Article 10, which speaks about the values and the principles of governance in this country. Remember, it's the first time a country is saying that these are the values of governance. For example, they speak about transparency. It speaks about the accountability. It speaks about the participation of the people. It speaks about democracy. It speaks about the respect of human rights. It speaks about equality. So if we were to look at those principles about equality, the rule of law, and all those principles I've mentioned, it meant that an individual like Mount Kenya region would feel comfortable with whoever is a president, whether they're in government or they're not in government, because they know that the rule of law will be respected. Let's, for example, take the Sakaja issue about the matatu. Sakaja is saying we want to organize the city. We want to have this city reclaim its lost glory. But the question is, can it reclaim the lost glory in the current status? The answer is no. So when he says, I want to organize a city, a purported Mount Kenya Kingpin comes and says, oh, you know what? Those matatus belong to Mount Kenya people. These Mount Kenya people voted for you. I mobilized them. So we lose the idea of reorganizing the city so the city can match up with other growing cities in the world, just because a particular community is feeling like it's being pursued for the wrong reasons, and because the particular community wants to hold this governor hostage, that you cannot do any change without us. They have become the city fathers. So you see, if there was that comfort that the rule of law will prevail at any given time, and there will be transparency in the manner in which things are done, we do not need the kingpin.
Maybe it's
so there is all wrong. Yes?
Maybe it's wrong. Actually, it's not wrong. It's people exercising Article 10 of the Constitution.
They cannot exercise Article 10 in exclusion.
It is expected that, there will be public participation. This is the public participating.
But you see, the reason why Sakaja is losing the debate is not because that people have not been involved. He's losing the debate because a tribal card has been pulled. A tribal card has been shown that if you joke around with us, 2027, you, Mr. Sakaja, tutakuonyesha red card. So what happens?
But then that begs the question. Are we then saying, or are we saying, if I'm to interpret what you're saying,
yes,
that what the Deputy President seemed to have been saying, that without the vote that I am speaking of, you would not have been governor. But is that true?
Sorry?
Is that true?
It's not true. Because we do not know how many votes that Sakaja got from the Kikuyu. Nairobi is not owned by the Kikuyus. We are all here. By the way, those so-called Kikuyus don't consider Kirinyaga people as Kikuyus, eh?
Oh. Why? They don't?
They don't consider us as Kikuyus, eh?
What do they consider you as?
As Kirinyaga.
Oh.
So when I say that we are all here, Mr. Omuga, yes, you who is not a Kikuyu, we're in the same bracket, eh? That we actually voted for Sakaja. So now the question is, when the deputy president, or when Mr. Rigathi Gachagua says that Gachagua was voted in by the Kikuyus, how about Sakaja? How about the votes that came from other communities? Why are you alienating them? Why are you defranchising them? Why are you projecting yourself as the only person who can make the determination of who becomes what? That if you want to become a president, go to the Kikuyu region. If you want to become a governor, go to the Kikuyu region.
But you're being very selective here.
No, I'm not being selective. We are discussing Mount Kenya region.
We are also talking about what City asked about our brand of politics.
Yes.
It's Kenyan politics.
It's toxic.
So when we talk about Kenyan politics being that way, Kenyan politics, we look at regional voting blocks,
yes,
and tribal blocks.
Yes.
The politics of Nairobi, everybody knows that. That's how you look at it.
Yes.
Why was Igathe picking Professor Kaloki? Why was Sakaja picking Mushiri as deputy? All those dynamics are in play.
They are.
It is looking at the communities and the numbers of the communities.
Yeah, because we have refused to move. We have refused to move from when this nation was founded. We have refused completely to have a paradigm shift. Remember, this nation was also founded on those principles of divide and rule. It's the same principle that is happening today. You divide them and you rule them. You show the other. You show or you project one community as the one that is determinant when it comes a question of who becomes the president, who becomes the governor of the city. And then you alienate the other communities. It's a completely Mzungu way of ruling. That is why.
But Wakili, there's something that has happened in this great city county of ours of Nairobi.
Yes.
That is unique.
Yes.
And it's unique in this sense. Huh? we've had two governors. One, Mr. Mike Mbuvi Sonko, and now Sakaja.
Yes.
Who one could argue straddle across these so-called tribal lines quite easily.
Yes.
These are people who, if you look at the response that the voter had, no one was very concerned about where they come from.
No.
They were concerned about the individual.
Yes.
So I am saying that at some level, we have moved. That's really what I'm trying to say.
But you see now, we cannot say to have moved CT, sorry.
Yes.
Because Mr. Gachagua says, had it not been for me, who brought my
Gachagua wasn't moved.
My Kikuyu votes.
No. It's him who hasn't moved. You see, there is a reality I think the Deputy President is actually presenting.
Yes.
We do vote along tribal lines. It's how does one choose an area in which they wish to contest a seat?
Yes.
You look at the community from which you come from.
That's correct.
Yeah. And then you look at the community that is nestled in that particular area.
That's correct.
And you have a chance. I don't think it's negative.
Yes.
You know, if you look at the West, the blue, the red.
I agree.
I think you've understood my point.
But you see now,
yes.
the difference between the red and the blue in the West is that they do not allow those red and blue things go beyond the election.
No, they do.
Us, we have allowed them to go beyond the election to an extent that when to deal with a development issue like it is, we'll still go back to our political cocoons. How will this affect the Kikuyus? How will this policy affect the Kikuyus?
But let me ask
How will this policy affect a particular community?
Okay. Voting interest.
Okay, let me ask
People
the question.
vote
But the
because
question
of
is,
interest.
when shall we break away from this?
Okay,
But those are the interests.
Let me ask the question, okay? If I look at the history of this country, not from 1960, I'm not going to go that far.
Yes.
I'm going to go to 2007 and what happened in the Rift Valley.
Yes.
Would you then not say that if somebody comes from what we call the Mount Kenya region and they speak about security for the Kikuyu, that they have a valid point that they're trying to
They have a valid point. Because
now, it could also be abused, but they have a valid point.
It has.
Don't
they have.
Now, I am going to take this discussion now to the BBI.
Yes.
There was a big hoo-ha about the 40 constituencies that the Mount Kenya region was proposed to get.
Yes.
And again, it was based on population. It wasn't random. There was logic.
There's a constitutional principle behind it.
There was logic, very sound logic behind it.
Yes.
But behind it all, again, there was the understanding that this would work well if we had a parliamentary system.
Yes.
Now, with the parliamentary system, it means if your region gets 40 constituencies, it means
we have the number.
Whoever wants to be in power has to talk to you. It does not matter what they do.
And that's the tragedy of politics and democracy. That numbers will always count.
Numbers will always count, yes, but not always. Because with democracy, then comes in the idea of coalitions.
Yes.
And that is what now makes our politics even more interesting, if I may say so.
Yes.
Okay?
Yes.
Experience teaches people certain things and they align themselves to any action thereafter based on that experience. Mau taught the people of the Mount Kenya region something.
Yes.
And a lot of what is being done is as a result of that.
Of that lessons that we learned.
Yes. 2007 was a reminder. Now, all I'm saying is sometimes it may be unpalatable in the manner in which it is said, but the logic behind the statements and the positions that some politicians take, if we consider the selfish nature of our politics and the individuals involved therein, you would say you cannot just, I think, push that whole matter aside and say that, honestly speaking, this person doesn't really have a point.
Again, I'll go to the reason why we had to enact the new constitution.
Yes.
And the history that preceded the new constitution.
Yes.
We were a tribal nation, and of course I even think now we are. But we were looking at how we could have a cohesive nation, a nation that is so unified, in the sense that I do not look at you from where you come from. I look at you from what you can do. Just like the Martin Luther said that we do not judge you by the content, by the skin of your color, but your content. So I think we need to have that debate, and that's why I said the whole process aborted before maturity, in the sense that the new constitution was not able to realize its purpose. That's why you can see today we have abandoned the whole aspect of unification. Remember, if you look at Article 134 of the Constitution, it speaks that the president is a symbol of national unity. So when you elect the president, irrespective of the political party or the region that he comes from, one of the major objectives is to unify the country. In the unification of the country, he is not supposed to have any political biases or prejudices that this community did not vote for me, this one voted for me. And when you speak about the presidency, you're speaking about the deputy president and you're speaking also about the president himself.
Because we have a presidency.
Because that's a presidency. So the whole major aspect is they unify this country. So when somebody comes in the name of fighting for his community and he repeatedly says, I am here to fight for my community, the question is, are you achieving that objective of unifying this country? And then that also begs the question is, how do we move towards the unification of this country? Are the politics that we play today having assisting or aiding in the process of realizing that dream of a unified country? And of course, the answer is no. Because of the issues that you have highlighted, the question of pre- and post-election coalitions, the question of the balance of the votes and the need to win by the majority of the votes. Those are some of the reasons that are making us not achieve that agenda. And you can realize, just because you have mentioned the BBI was geared towards assisting us realize that dream. Because a country cannot be unified if there is a particular community that feels defranchised in the sense that their votes don't count. A country will not be unified if the results that are coming from the elections will not yield the intended results of representation. For example, it's a fact, undisputed fact, that in Mount Kenya region, during the Andrew Gale Commission, there were some issues that happened that should not have happened that way. When he was given the responsibility of allocating the extra 80 constituencies, if you so remember, he was supposed to be guided by the formula of the population quota.
Yep.
He completely avoided that formula of the population quota. That's why you can see today we have imbalances of representation in Mount Kenya region. And it's a fact, because we want to move together as a unified nation. And I keep on saying electoral injustice is not just a question of my votes were not properly counted. Electoral injustice will also mean that my vote did not yield the intended results of equitable and equal representation. That's an argument I've always put forward. So for us to be able to move forward as a unified nation, we must first of all go back to the drawing board. We ask ourselves, what is it that is so much pertinent to the Mount Kenya region? What is it that's so pertinent to the Western region? What is it that they so feel they need to have this country to be done to them, so they can feel like they're part and parcel of this country?
So what is it? And that was my question initially, that the people of the Mount Kenya region, who are so often talked of as though they don't really know what they want and they need somebody who needs to come and then shepherd and lead them. But if you look at the time of fighting...
Would you kindly just repeat that again?
They're spoken of as though they don't know what they want, as though they don't know what they need.
Yes.
That somebody, they do. Somebody comes and says, well, I am the Kingpin. Another one comes and says, actually, well, no, it's me.
You see,
and these are a group of people who are level-headed thinking, one can only assume. Look at the time around independence. People coalesced around an idea.
Yes.
The people knew exactly what they wanted.
Yes.
They sought freedom, and they were ready to surround an individual who was going to fight for them.
Yes.
Today, you mean to tell me that the same people cannot converge around an idea, and that there are people who need to mushroom from here, say one thing today, somebody comes and says one thing tomorrow, and we keep oscillating around this idea that Mount Kenya this, Mount Kenya that. What do the people want? And that's the question.
Simple.
Because if we're talking about unification of a country, each region now needs to feel that they're well represented, and that they're unequivocally represented. What do they want?
You see, that's a very interesting question. And Mark Q, you must understand that the word freedom has now been abused and misapplied. The freedom we spoke about during those days is not the freedom that we are now experiencing, or this freedom that was now being spoken about. You must be able to distinguish that. That the current freedom that people speak about, that freedom has now come, was a self-gratifying freedom that was meant to make sure that cases are dropped in court, you are acquitted of the criminal offenses, the money that had been taken by the asset recovery is returned to you. That is the individual freedom that we're talking about. The freedom of the mind is the one that we need to have. Because if we have the freedom of the mind, we'll not think that we need a kingpin to come and argue our case. To the extent that we have not been emancipated in terms of where we are in our mind, we'll always be enslaved and we will not know what we want. Because currently,
Are you saying the people of Mount Kenya don't know what they want?
They don't know.
Really?
We don't know what we want.
And
we don't know whether we want the kingpin, whether we want the economy, whether we want it from the bottom or from the up. We do not know. Simply because these people want us to remain in that situation where we cannot have a common agenda. For example, you've heard them making proposals to amend the constitution. And to them, the most important thing is about the issue of the position for the leader of opposition. You've heard him saying that he wants the ministers to go to parliament. I'll bet the impossibility in it. But I don't blame the president. You know, he never, first of all, appreciated the constitution. And I'm very likely to think and invite to think that the president must have sworn with a document that he has not read the constitution. Allow me to digress slightly. He must have been sworn in with a document that he does not believe in, and he has never read it.
Why do you say that?
Allow me just to mention slightly
you
the
really
question.
Think that?
Yes, I will, and I will even ask him to look at his memorandum to the parliament dated the 9th of August, the 9th of December.
Why?
If you look at that memorandum, he made a very a proposal.
Yes.
That the office of the leader of opposition be anchored under Chapter 9 and Part 4 of the Constitution.
However,
Chapter 9 deals exclusively with the establishment of the executive arm of government. Because each arm of government, the judiciary, the parliament, and the executive, they have each has its independent and elaborate chapter. Then he says, anchor this office of the leader of opposition under Part 4. Part 4 is the part that establishes the executive offices, the office of the DPP, the office of the Auditor General, the office of the Attorney General, and all those offices.
And the office of the leader of opposition doesn't fall into that group.
It cannot be anchored there.
Okay, so where should it be anchored?
It should be anchored in where we have the people's representation in Parliament. That chapter that deals with the question of...
I think it's very clever of the Deputy President.
Representation.
He is trying to avoid a referendum. If you go anywhere else where you are tankering,
and you're right,
tankering with the structure of the executive,
and you're right,
structure of the legislature, then you are saying
you are so right. He's not even trying to avoid. If you look at that memorandum, he has advised Parliament, please avoid. Actually, in unequivocally, he has said avoid any route that will lead us to a long protracted it's very specific.
To a referendum.
It's very specific.
So we are sorting up. It's a political.
You cannot sort out this political mess without involving the people, and that's why I'm telling you, he never read this document.
No,
he has not appreciated it.
He's sorting out a political issue. How can we quickly?
What shall we do?
How can we quickly sort out this issue? If we had the person who was running it, if we had Raila appointed under that structure and he goes to Parliament.
Yes.
So you have sorted out a political issue.
But again, the question is, whom will he be representing in the Parliament? The executive or the people? Look at what he has done. Look at what President William Ruto has done. He has appointed a specific permanent secretary to be a link between the executive and the legislature. These are PS for that particular purpose. And then you ask yourself, when you come and say that there will be a PS for Parliament, how will they have an interface?
Has he abrogated the Constitution?
Of course. William has amended the Constitution by deeds. As we speak, the Constitution has been abrogated. It has been suspended. It has been amended.
These are major things you're saying, Wakili.
Yes, they are major things because...
We'll come again.
And I will actually say that. For example...
We'll come again.
For example, look at even the issues of the Hustlers Funds.
Black Bull, we've run out of time.
Oh, man.
You will come again.
We are going to invite you again.
You will come again.
We need to finish up that topic.
Yes, this is part one.
But allow me just to tell the people of Mount Kenya region, they should not be hoodwinked. Let them claim for the liberation of their mind. We do not need a kingpin to come and argue our case. If there is a problem with the matatu industry in Mount Kenya, in Nairobi, it affects every community and not Mount Kenya region.
Okay.
I have heard them saying, as I finish.
Well said. So said by the same man who said there's one Muthegi already in the community.
Yes, there is no Muthegi.
Now you're saying we don't need a Muthegi in the community.
Yes. Okay. Sawa.
This is the Situation Room. Thank you very much, Ndegwa Njiru, constitutional lawyer and political analyst. Join us again soon. Keep it here for more.